Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blanks and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC television podcast brought to you by the GSMC Television Network. I'm your host, Chad Bryce, and on today's show we are going to talk about the Golden Globes. We're going to highlight three of the big winners this year. We're going to start with a show on Netflix called Schitt's Creek. Then in our second segment, we'll talk a little bit about a historical drama you may have heard about called The Crown. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what is undoubtedly my favorite television show so far this year, a show on Apple TV Plus called Ted Lasso. And then stick around to the end. We're going to wrap up the show today talking about my top 10 Golden Globe nominated shows that I intend to watch. Stick around to the end so you can find out what those are, because undoubtedly we will be talking about them at some point on this podcast. So stick around for that. Should be a lot of fun. All right, so let's get started. The Golden Globes, the 78th annual Golden Globes. The Golden Globes are kind of thought of as the award show that kind of kicks off Hollywood's award season. It aired on the 28th of February this year. And because of COVID, they decided to do things a little bit different. And they had kind of a bi-coastal hosting setup this year. So they had both Tina Fey and Amy Poehler as the hosts this year. One in New York at the historic Rainbow Room, and then the other at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Los Angeles. Now, that if you haven't been to LA, the Beverly Hilton Hotel is kind of an iconic Hollywood hotel. Lots of award shows are held there every year, one of which is the Golden Globes. The pre-show, you can check it out on Hulu. I really, really liked kind of the Golden Globes pre-show this year. Because of COVID, they didn't have the usual setup with the red carpet and all the actors and different television networks kind of stationed along the carpet, asking questions and saying things like, "What are you wearing?" To all the celebrities as they go by. Instead, they kind of did this mix of interviews with celebrities at remote locations. So most of them were at their homes, and they were all dressed to the nines as though they were going to the Golden Globes, but doing it from the comfort of their home. While they did have a small red carpet at the Beverly Hilton this year, there was very few celebrities that actually walked the carpet. And then the others chose to kind of do their own posed photos at home. I actually really liked the way the pre-show was done this year. The pre-show tends to be one of those things that I kind of, throw on in the background while I'm making food or, doing whatever I'm doing before the actual telecast begins. And I really don't pay a lot of attention to it. And I found that this year, the way it was done was a lot more engaging. Felt a lot more intimate, much more personal. Even the photos online of all the celebrities in their attire the ones that were the most interesting were the ones that were taken at home. A lot of them chose to do them in their backyards, and it was just kind of nice to kind of get this glimpse into their real life, and that kind of intimate glimpse into their home life continued throughout the show as various individuals accepted awards or presented awards, from their remote locations. So kind of a, very different look for the Golden Globes this year, but definitely not a bad look. Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, they hit it out the park. Their intro monologue is available on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it out. They had a sparsely seated room full of first responders, so it wasn't a bunch of celebrities like there normally are, drinking around tables and kind of weaving through the crowd and hobnobbing during commercial breaks. Instead, it was these kind of socially distanced tables of first responders. And I felt like the way they addressed the opening of the show and the jokes were not just funny, but they were very appropriate for the time, but also took a little risk. They addressed the fact that there's a lack of diversity in the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which is the association of reporters that make the selections for the Golden Globes. And they did it in a way that I thought was very clear and yet tasteful. They also addressed the need for more representation of women in not just the nominees, but also in all aspects of the making of the television and movies. And when they weren't kind of touching on these kind of more social justice, long-term change issues, they were delivering some very, very, very well-planned, well-delivered humor. And I highly recommend checking that out on either Twitter or YouTube. So the Golden Globes I mentioned are selected by the Hollywood Foreign Press. They basically go to screenings throughout the year, and they kind of pick what they feel is the cream of the crop for that year. The Golden Globes are for both film and television, and they also honor all major network television as well as streaming services. It's probably not a shock that Netflix this year had the most nominations of all the various television, cable, and streaming services. They had 20 total nominations. Apple TV Plus had their first 2 nominations this year, and walked away with their first win as well for Ted Lasso, which we'll be talking about later on in the show. And so as I was looking through the winners, I decided to pick 3 to talk about, and it just so happened that the 3 that I picked were 3 that had won. So we're going to start with Schitt's Creek. So Schitt's Creek is available on Netflix. All 6 seasons of the show are available now. It's a total of about 80 episodes. I tell you that so that if you're planning to binge them, you kind of know what kind of commitment you're in for. The show Schitt's Creek is also syndicated on Fox Networks. It's a Canadian television sitcom that was created by father and son duo Eugene and Dan Levy, and was based on a concept that came to Dan as he was watching television, and specifically he was watching The Kardashians, and he began to wonder how the wealthy families like the Kardashians that are commonly depicted on American television shows would react if they lost all of their money. And so from that idea, he worked with his dad to develop it into the show that is Schitt's Creek. Now, if you're a fan of the show Arrested Development, this is going to be right up your alley. It is shot using single camera format. There's no audience or laugh track. And it focuses on the Rose family, whose business manager has embezzled all of the money and ran their business into the ground. And so that's kind of how the series starts. The series starts with a member of their household, one of their maids, walking down this grand, opulent staircase on the way to the door to answer the door. And when she opens it, there's a bunch of federal agents. And there's kind of a jump cut to the agents literally clearing out this house as the family members are running all over the place, trying to pack up as many of their personal belongings as they can, as the rest of their estate is seized by federal agents. The reaction from the family, as you might expect, is way over the top. They're running, screaming, like it's chaos and mayhem everywhere. And then there's a moment where they're seen kind of sitting on the last remaining piece of furniture in the house, which happens to be this like chase. And they're talking to their lawyer, and their lawyer shares with them that the situation's bad, really, really bad, but that they should look on the bright side because there's one thing that they still own that wasn't seized by the government, and that is a town called Schitt's Creek. Apparently the father had purchased the town for his son as a joke. And because it wasn't owned by the corporation, but actually owned by the father and son personally, it wasn't included in the government seizure. And so they have a respite, a place to go now that they have to leave their home. So the family packs up all of their belongings and they go to Schitt's Creek. Now, we've all driven or seen or heard of towns that are very small, where everyone knows everyone, and most people in the town spend most of their time planning their exit strategy. That's basically the town that the family is now moving to, the town of Schitt's Creek. They're staying at a motel in town. The mayor, played by Chris Elliott, has graciously managed to get them 2 comped rooms at this hotel so that they can stay, because they currently are in a financial strapped situation. And of course, they're approaching this with their very rich, very well-off kind of sensibilities. And so this juxtaposition between these very wealthy or formerly wealthy individuals who are used to all the finest things, as they arrive at this motel and start asking questions like, do you have a business center? Where is your spa? Can we get a suite? versus the adjoining rooms that they have. It just kind of builds upon each other, and gets funnier and funnier as the episode goes on and as the situation kind of continues to unfold. And then you add to it the fact that the town of Schitt's Creek is populated with a bunch of caricatures in and of themselves. I mean, the mayor, kind of this very simple guy with a very big ego, and really wants to kind of assert himself as this person of importance and make sure that these rich, wealthy people who bought the town as a joke understand that if they want things, they got to go through him. And so he starts out by showing them to their room and then not really leaving. So he takes them in, and they're kind of reacting to how the room looks, and he starts talking to them about, you see your TV's right here, and you got all the channels, and he's kind of flipping through channels, but not really leaving, just instead actually watching television as they're trying to find polite ways to get him out of their hotel room. And he just continues to kind of overstay his welcome, going so far at one point to ask to use their bathroom, and just really continues to kind of put them off. And it all comes to a head when the father kind of loses his cool and tells him to get the F out of the room, and the mayor takes offense. And as we find out later in the episode, when they need something from the mayor, he kind of stonewalls and points out that they could have been nicer to him. So the entire first episode is about this transition that the family is making from their very rich, very well-off life to the town of Schitt's Creek, and this change in their circumstances. And one of the kind of highlights of the show for me are the two children, David, played by Dan Levy, and Alexis, played by Annie Murphy. Their children are adult children, but their characters and the way they approach things is very much kind of this weird mix of adult and bratty teenager. And I find myself really, really enjoying the scenes that the actors playing the children are in because of that. I mean, they bicker with one another like teenagers. They pout and fight back against their parents as though they were kids. And it actually adds to the humor. And it's a very kind of fast show. All of the dialogue, all of the action, everything is very quick, very witty, very well written, and extremely well executed. I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you weren't a big fan of Arrested Development, at least sit down, watch the first couple episodes. It's a show that I very quickly put on my, okay, this is fun. The episodes are literally like 22 minutes. So you can real quick, in and out in an hour, see 3 of them and get a little mini binge going. And it's an enjoyable kind of ride. So I kind of put it in my, I've got these other shows that I'm watching right now that I'm really, really enjoying, but I'm definitely going to keep this one in my queue, ready to go, when I'm looking for something light and fun to watch. Okay, so we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the historical drama series, The Crown.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the GSMC Television Podcast with your host, Chad Bryce. Before the break, we were talking about the show Schitt's Creek, which was nominated for several Golden Globes this year. Now I want to move on and talk a little bit about a show called The Crown. A little something for all my history buffs out there. Now, The Crown is easily one of the most critically acclaimed shows that Netflix has done. The first 4 seasons are streaming now. And this year's Golden Globes specifically focused on the performances in season 4. It had the most nominations of any show at this year's Golden Globes with a total of 6. It was nominated for Best Drama, had 2 nominations for Best Actress, 2 nominations for Best Supporting Actress, as well as a nomination for Best Actor. So I had never watched the show. No particular reason other than I really just didn't feel it, wasn't feeling a historical drama. I've seen, some of the movies based on Queen Elizabeth and her life, like The Queen, which was a feature film in 2006. But I just had never really sat down and watched any of The Crowns or Downton Abbeys or any of the other shows that have been all the rage over the last several years. And so this was a great opportunity for me to kind of sit down and dig in a little bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Season 4, Episode 1. So for those of you who are like me, haven't seen the show before, it's a historical drama, and it's focused on the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. Now, that probably sounds like Greek to most people, so suffice it to say that Queen Elizabeth II is the current reigning Queen of England. And if that's not enough, she's the one that you commonly see wearing very brightly colored, matching dress, hat, and purse sets on TV. A purse which she's rumored to never set down, no matter how long she's at an event, which is a little tidbit of odd information that I found interesting. The show itself is created by Peter Morgan, and it further developed his feature film, The Queen, which was released in 2006, and apparently he had also done a 2013 stage play about her life called The Audience. The first episode aired on Netflix in 2016, and you can now watch the first 4 seasons, all of which are streaming on Netflix, and each season is 10 episodes. Now, unlike Schitt's Creek, which was a very fast 22-minute episode, real easy binge, these are a little more hefty. Each episode lasts just shy of an hour, and it's a historical drama, so you're going to have to kind of get in there and pay some attention. Definitely not one that I personally can sit and binge watch through, but certainly, a couple episodes a day or an evening is a good way for me to try to tackle it. Little bit about Queen Elizabeth II. She was born April 21st, 1926. She is the longest lived and longest reigning monarch in British history, having been crowned officially her coronation was 1953, but she assumed the throne in 1952 following her father's death. And she holds a number of distinctions that I thought was kind of interesting. She is the longest serving female head of state in the world. She's the oldest living monarch in the world, and she is the longest reigning current monarch. I had heard and seen Queen Elizabeth. Of course, she's been in the news this past week because her grandson Harry and his wife Meghan Markle had just done an interview with Oprah that was a little bit shocking and painted the royal family in a less than stellar light. And so when I was sitting and doing the research on the show, I was just shocked at how long the Queen has been in power. Thought it was really, really interesting. So that's a little bit of Queen Elizabeth's history. The show itself focuses on a different period in her life each season. And they've done something kind of interesting in their casting because it's literally covering chunks of time, 5-6 years, maybe a decade per season. And so one of the things that they're trying to account for is the fact that aging happens over the course of her life. And so they've made this very interesting decision to recast roles every 2 seasons. So in the case of Queen Elizabeth, Claire Foy portrayed her the first 2 seasons of the series, and season 3 and 4, the Queen is being played by a wonderful actress named Olivia Colman. She has won a number of awards for her performance as the Queen. She won 3 in total so far. She got a Best Actress Golden Globe in 2019. She got a Best Actress nomination in 2020. She also won the Critics' Choice Award in 2019. And I'd be fairly certain that she'll get a Critics' Choice Award nomination this year. She's just a phenomenal actress. And although this isn't a television show, if you have not seen her 2018 Oscar-winning performance in the film The Favorite, I highly recommend checking it out. And then once you watch it, go to YouTube and find her 2018 Oscar acceptance speech. One of the best, funniest, most honest acceptance speeches you will ever watch, right up there with Hugh Laurie when he accepted, I think it was a Golden Globe several years ago. So The Favorite, check it out. It's a movie. Moving on. So the first episode of the 4th season starts out with the Queen, and there's a lot kind of going on around her. In her life at this period of time. Margaret Thatcher is running for Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher is the first female Prime Minister in British history, served for 8 years. And in addition to that, there's a fair amount of unrest in the Commonwealth. Specifically in Northern Ireland, during this season, the NRA is beginning to kind of come into prominence, and they're showing their displeasure for British rule. And the Queen is also kind of navigating all of these, kind of personal palace intrigue pieces that seem to happen all around her, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So we have Prince Charles, who is kind of developing a reputation for being a little bit of a wild bachelor, kind of dating a new girl all the time, but he has this one woman, this one affair that he keeps kind of revisiting, and that's with a young lady named Camilla Parker Bowles, which many of you, if you're old enough to remember his marriage to Princess Diana, will recognize that name as one of the mistresses that he had during that period. And this is also the series or the season where we get introduced to Diana and the beginning of Prince Charles' relationship with her. Diana is played by a wonderful actress by the name of Emma Corrin. She won the Golden Globe this year for her portrayal of Diana, the Best Actress Golden Globe. And then the Best Actor winner this year is Josh O'Connor, who plays Charles. So as the episode kind of goes through, you've got these storylines, these three storylines that are all kind of woven together in a very nice kind of. I felt like it was kind of seamless. So you have the story of Margaret Thatcher. She's running for Prime Minister. She actually ends up winning that election. And the first real interaction we see her having with the Queen is in this telephone call that the two of them have. I'm sorry, not a telephone call. In this personal meeting, face-to-face, that the two of them have. The Queen is known for being a very stoic, kind of stiff upper lip, traditional royal, very hardworking, very very solid. And Margaret Thatcher has this kind of interesting character where she too is very strong-willed, stiff upper lip kind of woman, and they have this conversation where Margaret Thatcher acknowledges the Queen's work ethic, and how she admires how hardworking she is, and you can kind of get this sense that there's a little bit of apprehension, maybe even a mild uncertainty or dislike of Margaret Thatcher and the way she's kind of coming off. She seems very unyielding, very just like the Bradley Tank of prime ministers. I mean, it's just she's just so interesting. And the actress portraying Margaret Thatcher is Gillian Anderson, who actually won the Golden Globe this year for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Margaret Thatcher. A lot of the conversation around her portrayal of this character is from the fact that they look alike. So when you look at Gillian Anderson in that role side by side with the picture of Margaret Thatcher, very, very uncanny similarities. And in that interaction between her and the Queen is a really, really interesting one to see. Then we have the relationship of Charles and his father, and how his dad is trying to get him to. I'm sorry, I said his father. His uncle is trying to get him to settle down. And that's important because, as we learn later in the episode, Prince Charles and his father do not have a good relationship. His father is not happy with the way Charles is conducting himself. But more to the point, he's not happy with the way Prince Charles's uncle has taken to him. There's a little bit of jealousy there. Apparently, Prince Charles's father had this relationship with Prince Charles's uncle that was very close. And as Charles got older, it's like that relationship kind of shifted, and his father's now watching Charles have what he used to have, and doesn't really appreciate it. And so we get to see these conversations between Prince Charles's uncle and Prince Charles about how he needs to settle down. And Charles is feeling very much like he's been betrayed, like he doesn't have any allies in the family, and that everybody wants him to do things a certain way, but nobody is willing to support him when he makes these decisions. And while all of this is going on, we have Charles going out and kind of being himself. He's living his life. And we have this interesting scene where Charles is going to pick up one of his love interests for kind of an outing, and he's waiting for her. And while waiting, this young girl, I say girl, she's 18, dressed in a costume because she's practicing for a production of Midsummer Night's Dream. And she kind of comes into the room, this grand room that he's standing in. And she's kind of off in the distance. She's got the sun shining through the window behind her, kind of hard to see her. And there's this kind of conversation, this very flirtatious yet innocent conversation that happens between Charles and the young Diana. And it's really interesting because the conversation was one that at times seemed almost like what you would have with any younger sister of someone you were dating, right? But as the conversation progresses, you begin to get this feeling that his interest is piqued. And as Diana kind of traverses the room and gets closer and closer to Charles, it's like his interest kind of continues to increase in its intensity. And she finally shares her name with him and goes scurrying up the stairs. And he's kind of left struck, for lack of a better term. And his interest and kind of starstruckness with Diana is kind of reinforced in a future scene where he's calling and he's kind of getting information on her after having seen her at yet another kind of outing. He's just determined to get to know this young lady, Diana. And so then there's this third piece. So we've got the Queen and Margaret Thatcher. We've got Prince Charles meeting Diana. And then the third kind of section or story that's going on is this piece with the Irish Republican Army, the NRA. And it's very interesting. It's introduced in a series of video clips, like news clips of the NRA, and that they're declaring war on the British royals, that they want them out of Ireland, all of these pieces, and we see this scene where Prince Charles's uncle is getting ready to go out on a fishing trip, and he's got his grandson with him, and it seems very benign. And it's interesting because you almost don't realize anything is happening, because the scene is kind of entered with him having an argument with Charles and writing a letter to him, which he hands off to one of their assistants to give to Prince Charles as he's heading out the door to go get on this fishing boat, specifically to go lobster fishing. And as they're at the dock, we see a car pull up, and there's these two kind of shady-looking guys sitting in the car looking at the boat in the marina as it goes off out into the water. And there's this very interesting kind of hunting sequence where we literally see all the members of the royal family out. The Queen, Charles, Charles's uncle, Charles's dad, everybody is out, and they're all in different places hunting. Charles is fishing, the Queen is shooting deer, like it's the Queen's husband is bird hunting. It's just this really kind of interesting 4 different hunting scenes all going into one. And every time you see Prince Charles's uncle going out lobster fishing, there's this kind of allusion to these 2 guys in the car and the fact that they may not have the best intentions. And then all of a sudden the boat blows up, and it goes about the scenes of the family being notified of the tragedy. And the episode ends with 2 scenes. One is Charles has a very honest conversation with his father, where his father admits to Charles his jealousy of his relationship with his now late uncle. Charles has been selected to read at the uncle's funeral. And the other scene that I thought was interesting was the episode's final scene is of a phone call between the Queen and Margaret Thatcher, where Margaret Thatcher doesn't even let the Queen get a word in and launches straight into offering condolences, but also denouncing unequivocally the action that the NRA has taken and vowing war on the NRA, and setting up kind of what we'll continue to see throughout the rest of the season as they go off and begin a much more concerted kind of campaign against the NRA. All in all, good show. Again, it's a historical drama, not something that I'm going to sit and binge, 5-6 episodes through. But the acting's really interesting. And if you have any interest at all in history, this is a great show to check out. Because, it's not, every detail is not historically accurate. It's not that kind of show. But it definitely has kind of this basis in history, and then there's some poetic license taken throughout. And season 4 is a great one for anybody. I'm 44, so I'm old enough to remember Diana and Charles's relationship and when Princess Diana passed. And so anybody who experienced that in their life, this is a good kind of memory lane trip, so to speak. All right, so that's The Crown. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we are going to talk about what is currently my new obsession show. Best show I've seen so far, 2021, Ted Lasso on Apple TV Plus. And then we're going to end the show with my top 10 list, top 10 shows that were nominated for Golden Globes that I need to watch. So make sure you come back after the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Golden State Media Television Podcast with your host, Chad Bryce. Before the break, we talked about the Golden Globes. It's a Golden Globes episode, and we covered Schitt's Creek and The Crown. And now I want to spend a few minutes talking about a show on Apple TV Plus that was nominated for 2 Golden Globes this year, Best Musical or Comedy Series and Best Actor. Ted Lasso. Now, Apple TV Plus, relatively new streaming service, and it was nominated for exactly 2 Golden Globes this year, both of which were for its new show, Ted Lasso. I saw ads on Apple TV Plus for this show, and really had no real interest in checking it out. And I did it because of this podcast and because it won a Best Actor Golden Globe. And so I thought, I'll check it out. Quite possibly the smartest thing I've done so far this year was watch Ted Lasso. It is exceptional. So this is a show that premiered on the 14th of August, 2020, when we were all deep in the COVID lockdowns. And it was renewed for a second season 5 days later. The third season was greenlit 2 weeks after the season 1 finale on October 2nd, 2020. They haven't even done the second season yet. They've already greenlit the third. The response to the show has been absolutely fantastic, and the show itself is incredible. The series is based on a character that Jason Sudeikis, the lead actor, the man who portrays Ted Lasso, first portrayed in a series of promos for NBC Sports coverage of the Premier League in 2013. So apparently NBC had been in negotiations to get Premier League soccer television rights, and they were awarded those rights and started airing the Premier League games in 2013. And they decided to start this ad campaign, this kind of comedic ad campaign with Jason Sudeikis, where he played Ted Lasso, a character who was an American coach who had been hired on to go across the pond to England and coach soccer. This is an American football coach that's been pulled over to do soccer, so we get that American play on the European football. Joke right off the bat, and you can actually check out the ads where Jason Sudeikis is Ted Lasso for NBC Sports on YouTube. I highly recommend. Lots of fun. And so I guess the response to this character was so good the first year that they continued to do a series every year of commercials with this character involved. And then Jason Sudeikis worked with several others to develop it into a television show for Apple TV. this show, I've now watched the first 3 episodes of the first season, and the episodes move very quickly. It's a standard half-hour sitcom, so you can binge through them very, very quickly. But when I tell you that this show literally makes me smile, that is no exaggeration. I find myself grinning from ear to ear while watching Ted Lasso. Episode 1 starts with an actress by the name of Hannah Waddington, who's portraying a character named Rebecca Walton. And Rebecca Walton is, at the very beginning, she's in the middle of a divorce. Her husband, who used to be the manager and coach of the AFC Richmond soccer team, has cheated on her for the last time, kind of thing, and now they're getting divorced, and she's not happy about it. But one of the outcomes of that divorce is she now is the manager of this soccer team, AFC Richmond. And so she has decided to hire Ted Lasso to come across the pond and coach soccer for the first time in history. Now, Ted Lasso, played by Jason Sudeikis, is an American football coach who had just led Wichita State to a Division II NCAA football championship. It was his first season as their coach, took him from a losing team to a winning team, and she's now hired him to coach soccer. And so we see him and his assistant coach, played by a man named Brendan Hunt. The assistant coach's name is Coach Beard, as they're boarding the plane to go to England to coach soccer. And Ted Lasso's personality, I don't even know how to describe it. He's one of these characters that everything is just okay. Like there's no sadness or negative in his life, seemingly. He's on the plane and he's just looking forward to this flight. He's, almost like childlike excitement, unable to go to sleep, even though his assistant coach, Coach Beard, is advising him that he really needs to sleep on the plane because the time difference is going to kick his butt otherwise. And he's just like so very excited, that he simply can't sleep. And he's got all these kind of, odd colloquialisms and things that he says, and what's really, really funny about it is it's infectious. Like, one of the reasons he's so successful as a coach is because everybody likes the guy. He finds a way to win over every single player, coach, manager, fan that he meets, and you really get this sense, like you can literally feel his positive energy coming through the screen, the way Jason Sudeikis is portraying this character. And there's this wonderful juxtaposition between him and his assistant coach, Coach Beard, where Coach Beard's this kind of stoic, very smart guy who you just get a sense has been with Ted Lasso since the beginning and keeps helping him through. Ted will say something and the coach will correct him because he used the wrong term. Like Ted will say, we're going to play 4 periods. And he's like, nope, it's only 2 periods. Or he'll call it, Ted will call the player's shoes cleats, and Coach Beard corrects them, they're boots. And then, they go off on a whole thing about using boots for shoes and tires, and just their interaction is so fun and so interesting. And we see Ted Lasso having landed in England. He meets his new boss, Rebecca Welton, for the first time, and she just throws him straight onto the fire. Takes him on a tour of the facility and sticks him right into a press conference with a bunch of rabid English journalists, and it does not go well. It doesn't go well at all. And yet, Ted Lasso comes out of it with his usual kind of optimism that, yeah, it didn't go well, but it'll be fine because it's going to get better, kind of thing. And we learn in this moment that the reason he's been hired is because Rebecca wants to get back at her ex-husband by running the team into the ground. Apparently, there's nothing he loves more in the world than AFC Richmond, and she figures the best way to stick it to him is to take that team from a winning team and run it into the ground and make it a losing team, and if necessary, even end up selling off the team. And so she's kind of stacked the deck against Ted. And yet he doesn't seem to be deterred. And everything about him just says, don't bet against this guy, kind of thing. So he comes into her office the next morning, and he's got this box of biscuits, and he wants to start getting to know her. He wants to start what he calls biscuits with the boss. Biscuits, for those of you who don't know, are cookies in England. And so Rebecca wants nothing to do with him, and yet just the way he is, he's going to get you to like him, to talk to him, to engage with him. And he gets her to try one of the biscuits that she initially said, no, I can't possibly eat that cookie. And she bites into it and just gets this look on her face, like it's the greatest thing she's ever eaten in her life. And after she's kicked him essentially out of her office, because she wants nothing to do with biscuits with the boss every morning, she has her assistant go out and try to find out where the hell he bought these biscuits, because they're the best biscuits she's ever had. And he leaves her office and goes to meet the team, and that meeting with the team does not go well. They want nothing to do with him. And he starts to kind of roll out and set the stage for how he's going to approach coaching the team. The episode ends after he's had kind of a long day. He and his assistant coach have gone back to their respective apartments, and we see the first inkling that not all is well in Ted Lasso's world. He has a phone call with his family, and he talks to his son, and it's going great. He's telling them about England and the apartment and how nice it is, and hey, you got to come out and visit, kind of thing. And then he asks to talk to his wife, his son's mother, and the phone gets handed over to the mom, and then we hear that half of the conversation from Ted Lasso's side, and we begin to see that things are not good. They've actually, part of the reason he's taken this job is he and his wife have decided to take a break from one another. And the episode ends with this very kind of somber realization that underneath this exterior of joy is a very real emotional struggle that he's going through with his family. And after having sat there the entire episode just really, really, really loving and feeling the joy of this character and his life, it was even more impactful to end the first episode with this phone call, this kind of snapshot into what's wrong in his world. And it left me just wanting more. As opposed to sometimes, you kind of end an episode on something kind of, and you go, oh, well, that was depressing. This just left me wanting more. I cannot say enough about Ted Lasso on Apple TV+. I talked to one of my friends about it who also had kind of saw it but didn't bother to really check it out. And he, ironically, had also checked it out a couple days before I did, and had very similar feelings about it. Highly recommend. It is my favorite show so far this year. Ted Lasso, Apple TV+. Check it out. All right, we are going to take our last break, and when we come back, thank you guys so much for sticking with me here. When we come back, we are going to very quickly run down my top 10 Golden Globe nominated shows that I will be watching this year.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining me for this final segment of the Golden Globes podcast. We're going to talk about my top 10 Golden Globes nominated shows that I absolutely have to check out. Starting at number 10, we have Hamilton, the musical on Disney+. I saw the live show a couple years ago when I was in Chicago. And absolutely loved it. I thought the second act was phenomenal. And I'm really curious how the musical will translate into the small screen. So Hamilton, the musical, Disney+. Number 9, there is a show on HBO Max called Lovecraft Country. It's based on a novel, I believe. I'm looking forward to seeing that. It was nominated for Best Drama Series this year, so definitely want to check out Lovecraft Country. Number 8 on my list, The Flight Attendant on HBO Max, stars Kaley Cuoco. It was nominated for Best Musical Comedy Actress, and I like Kaley Cuoco from The Big Bang, so figure I want to check that out. Number 7, a much talked about show that I had watched a couple episodes of and had been meaning to get back to, called Killing Eve on Amazon Prime Video. There was a Best Actress nomination for Jodie Comer coming out of that one this year. Number 6 on my list, we have Hunters, another Amazon Prime Video nominee for Al Pacino, Best Actor in a Drama. Looking forward to checking that out. Then number 5, last summer's much talked about Emily in Paris on Netflix. Lily Collins got a Best Actress nomination for that one. I'm behind the times, haven't checked it out yet, so want to get that on the list of to watch. Number 4, The Great, musical comedy Best Actress for Ellie Fanning, and a Best Actor nominee for Nicholas Hoult this year. So I want to check out The Great. I believe that was originally like a CW offering, so want to check that out. Then there's a mini-series made for TV called The Comey Rule, starring Jeff Daniels. I love Jeff Daniels. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in The Newsroom, and want to check out The Comey Rule because he's in it. Number 2 on my top 10 list. We're almost at the end. Number 2, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist on NBC. Jane Levy got a Best Actress nomination this year for that one, and I'd kind of like to check it out. And my number 1 in my top 10 list of Golden Globe nominated television shows that I want to check out, The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Come on, Baby Yoda. Like, I'm kind of surprised I haven't checked it out already. Just for that. It got a Best Drama Series nomination this year. So that's it. That's the end of my Golden Globes top 10 nominees that I want to check out, and the end of this week's podcast. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Television Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Super, super, super helpful. Really would appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.